Hello everyone and welcome back to the coverage of the Magnus Invitational. We are continuing with the match Alireza Firouzja versus Anish Giri. After that craziness between Magnus and Nepo, that was really some supreme flagging action that happened in the Armageddon game. And judging from the comments, I understand you enjoyed that one. But here, these guys are playing for something very valuable. Well, not Alireza. Alireza has only 3 points and he can no longer reach the playoffs. But Giri could still maybe reach the playoffs if he beats Alireza and then beats Fabiano Caruana in the final round of the preliminaries. And Fabi also needs to lose both of his matches for Giri to catch up to Fabi, so both of them would be on 10 points. But still, I don't know if that will be enough for Giri to qualify. But still, he needs to try. So this is game 1, and he has the black pieces against Firouzja. So Alireza opens with the d4 and knight to f6 by Giri. We have c4, e6, knight f3, and d5. Queen's gambit is on the board. We have decline is on the board. Knight to c3 and bishop to b4. Again with the Ragozin defense. We have e3 and the castles. And here bishop to d2. We have b6, preparing to fianchetto the light square bishop, c captures on d5, a trade in the center, and rook to c1. So all standard Ragozin stuff, bishop to b7. And now, most common move here is just bishop to d3, you continue development, castle, and play the game on. But here, knight to b5 by Alireza. A very rare move that was played only in one game so far, which basically just trades off the dark square bishops. So okay, Giri trades, we have bishop captures, and now in that game we mentioned queen captures was played, but here Alireza goes for knight captures, and it is as of move 10 that we have a completely new game. So Giri pushes the knight back, and now knight just goes back to c3. So this knight to b5 plan was with the idea of trading off the dark square bishops, leaving white with only the light square bishop, and hopefully it will be not as useful as white's light square bishop, but as you often have it in the Nimzo Indian defense or in the Ragozin, you will often trade this light square bishop off by just developing it to a6. So rook to e8 and bishop to e2 now. Alireza continues development, and now bishop to a6. So Giri was waiting for bishop to a6 for Alireza to waste a move and only then play it. So we have castles, and now bishop captures on e2. We have knight captures on e2, and now queen to d6. Continuing development, keeping an eye on that c6 pawn. And here queen to a4, piling up on that c6 pawn, making it a bit difficult for black to develop. And here c5 really does seem like a principled idea. You don't want to keep this backwards pawn, but Giri defends it in a different way. He doesn't advance it, but rather he plays a5, and now he's gonna defend it with rook a7 to c7, and then bring this rook over to c8. So okay, Alireza will also double up on the c file, rook c3, we have rook to a7, and now rook f to c1, piling up on that c6 pawn. We have rook to c7 defending, and now knight to g3. We have rook e to c8 by Giri. Now even maybe preparing to go with c5, but it's a bit weird because, okay, your c6 pawn is defended, but if this trade ever captures here, then the a5 pawn is weak. But okay. We have knight to f3, and now knight b to d7. Now the knight can come into the game as the c6 pawn is defended 3 times. And knight to e1, shifting the knight over to d3 to keep an eye on e5 and c5. So g6, not allowing knight to f5, and knight to d3 now. We have h5 by Giri, preparing h4, and f3 now. We have h4, knight back to f1, and just king g7, improving the position of the king. We have a3, and now comes h3, trying to create some kingside weaknesses, and here Alireza just goes g4. So not allowing this knight any jumps, all of these squares are nicely protected. And finally Giri goes for c5. So knight to f4 first, just going after the h3 pawn. And here Giri decided to defend the pawn with the rook, and he played rook to h8. And this is all, well, now the pawn is defended, but now you will have problems with your c5 pawn. Here, knight to g3 by Alireza, and here Giri goes knight to f8, just trying to shift this knight over to e6, but this requires him to abandon the defense of the a5 pawn, but it's what Giri goes for. We have knight to f8 and d captures on c5 now, making sure that now the a5 pawn will be left defenseless. We have b captures and queen captures on a5. So here Alireza just grabs a pawn, which really makes it the whole idea of a5 and shifting the rooks like this kind of weird, and not pushing c5 right away. But okay, we have knight 8 to d7, bringing the knight back, and now g5, just pushing that knight all the way back, knight to h7, and now this knight will have some problems regarding how to re-enter the game. Knight captures on h3, also defends the g5 pawn, and grabbing yet another pawn. So here Alireza is up 2 pawns. We have rook to b7, now going after the b2 pawn, and should you defend it, Giri will just pile up on it with rook to b8, and it will be very hard to defend it, so Alireza just decides to give back 1 pawn. So b4, we have captures, and rook captures on b4 now. So still he's up a pawn, and f4 now, defending this pawn, and now the h3 knight can once again re-enter the game. We have knight h to f8, it's time for Giri to reactivate his knight, and knight to f2 now. We have knight to e6 and rook to c6 now. Knight to e6 is a mistake by Giri, as it allows Alireza this rook to c6 move, which now forces Giri to give up the d5 pawn as well, as the queen has no squares from where you can defend it. So we have queen to e7, and now queen captures on d5. And again, Alireza up 2 pawns. We have knight e to f8, and now comes queen to d3. Just keeping an eye on the e3 pawn, and Alireza will slowly start to enjoy his 2 extra pawns. We have rook to h4, but now knight f to e4. And we have king to h7. We have rook to c7 now, going after this knight here. You will be able to attack it plenty of times. You might imagine some ideas like captures here. You give up the rook, knight captures, queen captures, and after queen captures, knight f6 check picks up the queen. So even ideas like that are possible. So first queen to e6 by Giri, and now comes knight to f2. Here, if you go for this, like we mentioned with rook captures here, and then knight captures, and if you go queen captures, now it's a bit of a problem, because after queen captures, knight f6 check, king g7, knight captures. Okay, it's still 2 knights and the rook against 2 rooks, but white would still have to work very hard for his meal. So Alireza doesn't force this, which I thought he definitely would, but instead he goes knight back to f2, and now rook to b3. Rook to b3, attacking Alireza's queen. We have rook 7 to c3, offering more trades, and rook to b2 now. We have knight g to e4. Now again, keeping an eye on that f6 square, and now Alireza will try to improve the position of his king, get the king all the way here, and then get the other knight to g4 to also go after the f6 square. So rook to b6, Giri has to wait and see what Alireza will do, as he's the one who will be doing the pushing. King g2, we have rook to h5, and now king to g3, the knight covering h3, so you cannot infiltrate with the queen. Queen to f5, and now knight to g4, and now both knights are covering the f6 square, and you have problems here. So Giri played king to g8 here, but it doesn't help if you go king to h8 to get out of checks, because queen d4 check forces the king to go once again to a light square, or you play f6 and then rook c8, and black is never holding this. So after knight g4, we have king to g8, but now Alireza just goes after the f6 square, knight e to f6 check, and this just forks the king and the rook. We have knight captures with check, and now, first Alireza decided to trade queens, of course, captures, and only now knight captures on f6 with the same fork. Now rook captures on f6, you have to give up one of the rooks, so Giri decides it's better to give this one up and maybe mess up white's pawn structure a little bit. So king to h7, and now rook to c8, going after the knight, knight d6, and now rook to d1. With the idea of just a nice rook lift here, we have king to g6, and now rook to d5. And here we have king captures on f6. Rook d5 is with the idea that if king captures, you have this e4 push, which Giri goes for. We have captures, and then now e4. So you cannot capture, as the rook would hang. So knight g7 defends the rook and the f5 pawn, but now e5 with check. King g6, and now rook to g8. And here, of course, Alireza is just preparing to bring the other rook over to the back rank, and that's pretty much it. Black will have no more moves. So here, Giri played king h7, and after rook d to d8, it was in this position that Anish Giri resigned the game, and the game 1 of their match goes to Alireza. So here you resign because you have no moves, this rook is never entering the game, and there's just, after this check, you're going to trade rooks, and you're going to be up a pawn and up the exchange. So whatever you play here rook h6, let's say you're gonna go rook to h8 check, and after king g6 you can either capture, or you can go here check, and after the knight blocks exchange then, and still you're up the exchange and up a pass pawn, which is of course completely winning. So here Giri resigned, and he will try his luck in game 2, where he will have the white pieces. So yeah, that's the game. I do hope you enjoyed it. It was a really it's hard to say. Giri first lost a pawn, then another pawn, then okay, Alireza gave one back, as he decided he will not be able to defend it, or rather maybe he will, but he should sacrifice a lot of activity, and then Giri gave up another pawn. So this is Nakamura gave well, a short speech during the live coverage that, aside from for maybe Nakamura and Carlsen, Alireza is the most experienced one in this field in online chess, and of course a lot more experienced than Giri. So these shorter time formats and playing online definitely do favor him. But yeah, we'll see how it goes. Still have 3 more games to go, and we're going to cover that as well. So yeah, I would like to thank Nc3 K, Lucas Prattle, Frederick Karaher, Joseph Basset, and Abdul Mohsin Al-Raji for your contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing the coverage of the Magnus Invitational until it finishes. So thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.